Hey guys, I'm Jordy, and this is your guide to the pile of flesh only Papa P could love, the abomination Rotface.
I think I made an angry poo-poo. It's gonna blow!
Now, Rotface is a single phase fight where you'll be managing a room filling up with green ooze on the ground, as well as a stacking slime mechanic that requires your off tank to hoover up the little ones in the room to create 1 giga slime that will eventually explode under its own weight. As far as raid composition goes, you're looking at 2 tanks and 5 healers. This one could very easily be healed with less, but for your first few weeks, 5 is a great place to start, so let's play it safe and go with that. Alright, so Rotface is all about controlling these little slimes on the ground. Let's discuss how they work. Every 15 seconds or so for the first few minutes of the fight, Rotface will pick someone in the raid and apply a disease debuff called Mutated Infection onto them. This does damage and applies a Mortal Strike type debuff onto them, but most importantly, when it's cleansed, it will spawn a small ooze near the target. Now this ooze has no threat. It fixates on the person that had the disease and follows them, doing some melee damage and also nature damage to anyone within range of the ooze. After another 15 seconds, Rotface will apply another mutated infection, and we have the same thing happen. Disease is cleansed or expires, and another small ooze spawns. Same thing. However, if 2 of these oozes happen to get close to each other, they will merge into 1 big ooze. These do have normal threat mechanics, so they can be tanked and should be by your off tank. We use a prop paladin for this, but a DK, a feral, anything is good. Now this big ooze has 2 stacks of unstable ooze, increasing its damage. This ooze also moves a lot slower than the small ones, so it can be kited around and its damage avoided almost entirely if done correctly. It does, however, hit like a truck, so make sure that you don't get hit by it. It's like getting hit by an assault bot on Memoron. Now this big ooze will also throw sticky ooze on the ground. These are small damaging pools of ooze that slow anyone that stands in it. Just avoid it, no big deal. If a big ooze and a small ooze meet, they too will merge, and the big ooze will then have 3 stacks of unstable ooze. Once this reaches 5 stacks, it will stop moving and begin casting Unstable Ooze Explosion. It explodes, throwing globs where everyone in the raid is currently standing. So as the ooze sails through the air, everyone should move from where they were to an empty part of the room, because the ooze will land where they just were and deal a large amount of damage. This is all completely avoidable. Okay, that's the main mechanic for the fight. Let's talk about some other small stuff. Every 20 seconds, a quarter section of the room that Rotface is in will become flooded with green slime on the ground. This is telegraphed by the tanks beginning to rupture on the walls and spreading green at the area. Just move left or right of the green, or even into melee range, and you'll avoid all the damage. This also applies a stacking slowing debuff every second that you're standing in it, so try to avoid that, as movement on this fight is important and being slowed definitely hinders that. Additionally, Rotface himself turns and sprays slime in a cone in a random direction around him every 20 seconds. This is super easy to dodge, just move left or right of him as he's casting and avoid it. Finally, Putricide lends a helping hand and will cast Vile Gas at 3 players every so often. This is identical to the one cast in the Festergut encounter. You take damage and lose control of your character for 6 seconds, so make sure ranged stays spread out to avoid chaining it. And that's really it as far as Rotface's abilities. Let's see how it all comes together in the walkthrough. Alright, on pull, we run in and lust. Like Festergut, you can pre-spread the raid, so do your best to inch around the edge of the room in designated quadrants for maximum spread. Okay, 15 seconds in, your first mutated infection goes out. This person should move away from anyone else and then be cleansed. The ooze is going to be stuck to them, so make sure that they have heals and try to keep it away from the rest of the raid because of its damaging aura. 15 seconds later, the second one will go out, we cleanse it, and have those 2 people meet up, fusing them, and once the big ooze spawns, the tank taunts and begins to kite. From here on out, every time a disease goes out, that person needs to look around for where the off tank is and move towards them, and get their ooze fused up with the big one as fast as possible, avoiding standing near it too long as it has a damaging aura as well. Okay, so your off-tank handles that while the rest of the raid moves around, avoiding the slime flood, the cone of damage from Rotface, and stays spread to avoid chaining the vile gas to hit too many people. When the off-tank sees that the big ooze is going to explode, he tells the whole raid to plant their feet. As it explodes, and only then does he say move. The whole raid must then move away from where they were standing, as the explosion will land on where each raid member was standing at the time of the explosion. So move away from that spot and keep pumping. People don't always execute this perfectly, so a desac here is a great idea. About 2 minutes into the fight, he'll start throwing out mutated infections at an increased rate. This is just something you're going to have to deal with. Keep kiting, managing the explosions, and avoiding all that area of effect damage. If you've juggled the oozes long enough, you should quickly be looking at a kill. Congratulations. Alright, let's talk about some tank tips. Your Rotface tank really has nothing to do but stand in the center of the room and tank, but your ooze tank is going to have a lot going on. Make sure that person has a good microphone and does their best to call where they are. They're kind of the quarterback for this fight, so give them the room that they need to do what they do. And remember, don't get hit by those big oozes. They hurt. So do whatever you have to avoid them while kiting safely. For your healers, this fight can be kind of bursty sometimes when people get slowed or stuck with vile gas, and AoE stuff on them, so a clutch freedom or a bop can be helpful here when the ooze is on somebody. Also remember to desac the unstable ooze explosion, and try not to get caught by someone splashing vile gas on you. It will really interrupt your heal's effectiveness. And for the DPS, do your best not to get hit by the cone, the flood, and especially be mindful of the oozes. If you get mutated infection on you, remember that the healers won't be able to top you up very easily because of the healing reduction part of the debuff, so pop a defensive to mitigate the extra damage. And that's it for Rotface. He's definitely on the easier end of bosses in ICC, so I'd highly recommend you spend time on him week 1 to get him down on Heroic. If you enjoyed this guide or learned something, do me a huge favor and like and subscribe. It helps me a ton in growing the channel, and I super appreciate it. And if you're looking for assignment cheats or a loot prio guide for Phase 4, check out my Patreon. I've got early access to them on there. It's really helpful to prep your guild for ICC. And speaking of Patreon, huge shout out to these chads for the support. Thank you guys, it means a lot. Okay, well that's it for me. See you in the next one.